Except where the children are, or except in education where the children are concerned, that nurturing emotive part of us does come into play. So there's a place for everything, and a lot of what we're dealing with right now, there's a little bit too much emotion that people are operating in, and we have to get with the facts and stop being so emotional as we make these choices that are indeed very political.
Yes, I love that. Yes, put them on, like, yes, speak that truth. I love it. So yes, that is a little bit of background of how I became connected with Arden, and some of our common interests. But go ahead, take it away, sis. I'm gonna turn off my camera. I'm gonna shut off my mic. If I need to, I'll just say a little something. So I may give you a time check at about the 7:45 mark or so people have time to ask questions and things of that sort.
Okay, and I'll check in because it's for me to determine how far to go. So I'll definitely, keep me on track, and I'll ask when I get to a certain part that I know could take up some more time. So thank you for that.
Okay, sounds great. All right, sis, take it away.
All right. All right, so let's start with being on the same page. And when I say being on the same page, when it comes to dialogue and conversation, oftentimes what get lost in translation and communication is just the fact that people don't mean the same thing when they're talking. And especially if we're talking within the English language, where we have more homophones than any other language in the world. So I just want to start with just getting us on the same page with some definitions so we could be within context. And I am having, I hope, let's just, my PowerPoint is going to work properly. It's going to work properly, but it's okay. So when the definition of education for me, it's a composite. It's a composite of various leaders who something about the truth of what they believe about education resonates. Sri Aurobindo is an Indian philosopher who just sort of mentions here that, education can't be taught. And that speaks to the fact that we're experiential when it comes to learning. We learn through experience and application. As an adult, I'm assuming mostly adults are watching us tonight, it doesn't matter how many times your mother, auntie, uncle, grandmama, papa, whoever said, don't do this, do that, this would, try to teach you. We had to do it, whether we got in trouble, got hurt, or whatever, we had to do it. We had to experience it in order to truly get it. Aurobindo's second principle is that the mind has to be consulted in its own growth. The third principle of education is to work from close to you, from near to get to the far, to that which shall be. So starting where you are. And that's definitely, they just resonate, as ancient as he may be, they're modern concepts and what we need to apply right now, because again, mental, not emotional, being more logical in our thoughts and looking into ourselves, which brings me to two definitions of education that guide my educational philosophy. I didn't say in my introduction that I was a public school teacher before I, before I educated my own children and developed Sage Academy. Ran an early education school for a while, a daycare for some time. So over the years, my educational philosophy has developed, grown, shifted, changed. And these two psychologists, which I actually just noticed that connection while working on this PowerPoint, these are both two psychologists. So just again, speaking to the psychological and mental weight that we have to give to education. But beginning with the root of who I am as a person, Dr. Naim Akbar, he has chaired for many years the Association of Black Psychologists, professor out of, I think, Michigan State University, and a renowned psychologist for the Black community, author of The Community of Self, who says that education is the means by which people gain control over their own thinking. This thinking should equip that people to satisfy and provide for their needs. The special culture characteristics of a people require that they have a unique educational experience. And then to foil that, Peter Gray is an American, not African native or origin, but also a psychologist who says that education is the sum of everything that a person learns that enables that person to live a satisfying, meaningful, and moral life. So where these cross is that the unique characteristics of people that have to be addressed in order for them to satisfy their needs, it varies from people to people. And at most, all we can do is take glimpses from other people's educational experiences and concepts and apply them where they may fit. But ultimately, every group of people are responsible for their own education. And the purpose of it is to acquire what we need to be satisfied, meaningful, moral, to be happy. And that education is a lifelong process. All right, so lifelong learning. It doesn't stop, it doesn't end. Come on, PowerPoint. It's being very sensitive tonight. Okay, so I'm gonna go really quickly into a history of education. Let's see if this link works for you all. Nope, can't do that. So really quickly, going to, here we go, perfect. Can you, am I still sharing the screen, Ayana?
Yes, I still see it says history of education circular before the 1930s.
Oh.
You're all set.
Oh, it's the PowerPoint, or
Yes.
did I take you online? All right, I'm gonna take you. Okay.
Yep, I still see the PowerPoint.
So I should probably do my desktop. All right, I'm gonna take you here really quick, you all. So this is just history.com. And I wish I like to engage with my crowd, so this is challenging. But you all remember the hall monitors? The hall monitor existed the first 30 years of the 19th century, giving you a history of education here, right? The first 30 years of the 19th century. So that would have been like 1801 to 1830-ish, somewhere around there. And it was popular in our region, Northeast region of the United States, New England, all right? And here's how it worked. When school began, the teacher taught a lesson to the monitors. A cadre of students selected for their high exam scores or exemplary character. High exam scores, okay? Where are we now in this test-driven public school system? Then these monitors would go back to their classes and impart the lessons to other students. Okay, I'm going to skip that paragraph about the practical implications and jump to the fact that the title of this article was that early American classroom students govern themselves. All right, so then the students didn't always govern themselves in early American classrooms. In the small one-room schoolhouses of the 18th century, students worked with teachers individually or in small groups, skip school for long periods of time to tend crops and take care of other family duties, and often learn little. Others didn't go to school at all, taking private lessons with tutors instead. All right. This sounds a lot like today's homeschool experience. This was the educational experience, and we're referring to America here where we are. All right. We're not here to talk about, Afrocentricity or anything like that. We're just talking about education in the space that we exist in and where we're being educated. So this laxity in the way people learned, it wasn't acceptable for a British teacher by the last name Lancaster, for which a town here in Philadelphia is named, in Pennsylvania. He said this is just too lax. It needs to be more structure, more centralization and control, regulation, right? So by the early 19th century, all right, still this is fairly recent, 1930s. His system migrated into the United States, and he convinced folks here that they could afford school. And then there's a beginning of public schooling. All right. So this is only homeschools basically came into existence. We're talking about around the public schools in the 1930s, somewhere around there. Okay. They were building, though, if we could see here, between 1806 and 1830. All right. His monitors dominated the classrooms. And the system was even used by missionaries to instruct Native American children through the 1840s. So this is where we have there was no separation of church and state. All right. So just a little bit to keep the kind of, so you could track with me when we get into your legal considerations. A school run on the Lancaster principle looked different than any you've ever attended. Instead of being separated into different classrooms by grade or subject, students of all ages sat in rows in a single room. They were separated into classes not by age, but by their mastery of certain subjects. Monitors responsible for almost every aspect of classroom management, catching up with kids who miss classes, examining the nation's students. Okay, so they basically had the majority of responsibility, not teachers. Larger schools, the monitors, they had designated stations. Once they had memorized their rote lesson or completed the assigned written work on the slate, class members were demonstrated for the monitor. A new lesson would be assigned to the monitors and the school day will continue. The piece there is, again, memorization and rote. That's not learning. That's just retaining whatever it is that the source of information is giving to you to remember and recall and later pass your test with. Let's see. So we had the good monitors. And I think that was the gist of wanted to share here. That's the gist of what I wanted to share there. So just bringing emphasis to the fact that we had the run room concept, and that's also very, typical of homeschool families where our children are different ages. And we have to figure out how to best educate each child in the singular space of our home. Okay. Going back to the PowerPoint. So a little bit of, history of the education, and the point there, I also want you all to keep in mind is the fact that, I'll go into it later when you can see it visually. Come on, Mom. Okay, so what is homeschooling? This thing is moving all over the place. So we got the definition of education. Here is the definition of homeschooling, just with a quick Google search, really quick. It's simple. The education of children at home by their parents. All right, so we're all on the same page. I am taking you now to the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. This is a group of lawyers who basically advocate for homeschooling and support the homeschooling community pretty closely with, just making sure that our rights aren't violated in that regard. And making sure, it's actually a good support system when it, in terms of what we can say about lawyers. So the HILSDA, Homeschool Legal Defense Association, has on its websites these common characteristics of homeschooling. It's parent directed, okay, and that basically means that the parent, for a minor, their children, we still make the decision or direct our children towards the homeschooling. Education, and I'm making that distinction because ideal education, we wanted that to be student directed or student led. But again, we're looking at the legal implications. So I just want to make those distinctions. Education is customized to meet the child's and the family's needs. Education can take a broader meaning beyond academics. Education is primarily home-based. Educational choices are up to the parent, but must still comply with state homeschooling laws. So what could homeschooling look like for your family? You get to decide. Okay, you get to decide, and it's a very unique experience for every household. What my household needs, how my children learn, what they're interested in, the resources we have, what our schedules are, what's important to us in terms of values and goals, that differs for every family. So your homeschooling journey is unique to your family and household. Okay, some additional terms you need to understand: virtual, hybrid, and remote or distance, which are the same thing. All right, virtual, it just means on the computer. The source of my definitions is the www.merriam-webster.com. That's the online dictionary I default to when, in teaching online. And that's what I recommend to anybody in terms of teaching. And why? Because Merriam-Webster is the writer of the dictionary who memorialized the words of this country with, during its founding. All right. So if you want to make sure you're really talking about what everybody else is talking about, particularly when dealing with legal matters, you want to make sure you're using the language that they have endorsed. So virtual, it's on a computer. Hybrid, two different components performing essentially the same thing. That could mean right now, as those of you might be in hybrid learning, maybe, well, it's shifted. So before where we are now, your child at one point had the choice to go to school certain days and be home some days. Some teachers are in the classroom with the physical students present while teaching virtually to other students who are home. All right. And then the remote or distant learning, doing or using something indirectly or from a distance, okay, such as using or involving a network connection between computers or systems in different locations. For example, remote learning, all right, and that could be a hybrid situation, but it's virtual regardless if you're online, all right, and we need to understand these terms as the shifts are occurring, post-pandemic, well, during this pandemic, in terms of the choices that are being offered in education and how your children are being educated, so on and so forth. And then there's a huge shift to homeschooling now, okay? So I also want to be very clear that because I operate an academy, I'm very clear that virtual school is different from being educated at home or homeschool and learning virtually. Factors that I'm sure you all are considering as you make this decision about your educational journey. All right, they're spiritual, they're legal, they're logistical, they're financial. Whatever your considerations are, fall under one of these four categories. First quote I found was by Steve Jobs, Apple, okay, the Apple guy. Have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow know what you truly want to become. Those of you who are even here listening, there's something in your heart, your spirit, your mind, your body that has you thinking, feeling, or contemplating the need, the desire, or that you should probably, take your child out of a situation that may or may not be serving him or her or the family, right? Your child's your education is as good as what you can transfer to your child and vice versa. All right. So I hear that I'm just essentially going to say, follow your intuition and figure out your why. Why do you want to homeschool? Why do you feel like you want to pull your child out? Be honest with yourself. Listen to yourself. And essentially, it's not wrong. Nothing's wrong. If you're not hurting yourself, others around you, causing harm or dangerous, you're not doing wrong. And what you will do is the best you can, because your child is, your most valuable asset. So, legal considerations. You have your state level, right? On the state level, is just as unique as your homeschooling experience will be for your family, is just as unique as it could be with regard to what the state wants where you live. All right. So my advice to you in this regard would be to go to the HILSDA, the Homeschool Legal Defense Association website. If you're on the home, you'll find this. I think where to start is the link, and homeschool laws by state. You pop in your state and it's going to tell you exactly what you need. For example, I can tell you in Connecticut, well, two things. I'll talk to two people here, because some of us have children who haven't ever been in the system at all. Okay. There's nothing you have to do. They haven't been taking from the funds or recorded on the books or whatever have you. You just, that's another, topic, but you have your paperwork in order, do what you got to do to secure your household, and, you're easy. It's easy for you. It's easy for all of us based on your perspective. But if you have been enrolled, your child has enrolled at all, then in Connecticut, for example, all you have to do is submit a letter of intent to homeschool. All right. The nuances around that would be a whole nother a whole nother workshop. But essentially, you submit the letter of intent to homeschool and you're done. Okay, that's Connecticut. Other states, there's a lot more oversight. There's evaluations. You may have to, prepare a portfolio or submit, records or proof of what the child is learning, those sorts of things. So again, it depends on each state. So hilsda.com and askpauline.com is also a very good source. Okay, Ask Pauline, www.askpauline.com. On the state level, you also have, so standing on the state is your constitutions. All right, I'm not going to get, excuse the typo in that. That was a cut and paste and I forgot to catch the A. So that's Article 8 of Education. And again, this is just an example, because I'm native to Connecticut. That's what I'm using here as my example. But law is hierarchy. All right, so I'm starting backwards to take you to the beginning. All right, your immediate concern legally is what your state wants. Go to HILSDA, ask Pauline, figure out what they want, do that, and you're good. All right, where does that law come from? The Constitution in your state. All right, you can Google the Constitution of whatever your state is, do Control F, Command F, find, and put education to see what your Constitution says about education. All right. In Connecticut, all it says is that the state has to provide education for those who want it. And then the largest Ivy League school in Connecticut, Yale, is the only entity as far as schools named in this section of our Constitution. And why? Because Yale is the, they hold, they're the what do you call it? But they're a holder. They're a holder of the fund and the source of training and education of how children should be should be educated in Connecticut. All right. So start with your Constitution. On the federal level, I would just bring your attention to the preamble and Amendment 1. All right. The preamble of the Constitution tells us that the Constitution secures the blessings of liberty. The Constitution secures the blessings of liberty. We all know how liberating it is to be educated. And then our Amendment 1, that no law shall be made respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Hence, the schools in the early 1800s were flag schools inside churches, or, the Pilgrims, or, the colonizers, whatever have you. It was through their standing on the Bible. And that's why I intentionally chose this image and placed this slide here with all of the law or statutes and codes standing on the Bible, okay, which is the first law, which Congress has ordained the Bible as the word of God. Okay, what is the connection there? Because these public officials who are making decisions or affecting your family in terms of education take an oath to the position they serve through its Constitution. And that oath, part of it says that they have to defend the Constitution, which contains the relegated obligations and duties of those positions. All right. So education is a state matter. So for example, and what we're dealing with the, let's say the masks, whether or not children have to wear masks in school. This is not the president's mandate. It's the governor of each state that is making decisions about the school system, and it's the superintendents who have to adhere to the governors. All right. When the federal government gets involved in that regard, it's coming down to the bottom line. Either you can do what we would like done, or you can lose your funding. So once again, the governors have to decide. They make a choice based on funding. Okay, but nevertheless, it's a choice that the governor makes. All right, another workshop. Then you have your logistical considerations. You know, you want to pull your child, you want to homeschool, but I got to work, you know, our schedules won't do it. This is where, and this, I didn't put this in here. This is where your tribe is important, people. You have to find your tribe. All right. You have to find your community, your people. All right. It may not be family. Believe it or not, homeschoolers get a great deal of slack from their relatives. I know a story of a woman who's living in her parents' house. This is a choice made, COVID, folks all jacked up financially. They decided to go back home just to regroup. They are back home, you know, trying to preserve everybody financially, deciding to homeschool, and the parents don't agree with it. But this woman standing on her square saying, this is what I know is best for my child. But meanwhile, she has, you know, she has to fight with her mom, you know, to make that happen. So standing on your square, as you know, Ayana mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, it's important, and that it's not always legal that we have to do that. We have to do that when it comes to our households, our families, and what's important to your household values. All right. So you find your tribe, and your tribe is enlisted to be present while you're at work. You know, make sure, you know, can you stay at the house while I'm at work, while they're online? Or, you know, you just may need support in terms of drop off and pick up. It's scheduling, it's sitting down, it's communicating. What do we need in terms of transportation, childcare, meals, support with uploading the child's, you know, to Google Classroom, if they're doing, if something is outsourced, getting into resources in a minute. You can't do it alone. So find your tribe, find your people. All right. These are all considerations that at the end of the day, I hope one of the things that come across is that don't let any of these stop you from making the choice, if that's what it is that your spirit tells you to do. The mandates are some of the reasons people are considering, you know, Florida, we don't want to wear the mask. People have different views about whether or not they want their children vaccinated. If you're in the public schools, you're in the public domain. So these become choices that we have to make in terms of, you know, what do you want to do as far as the mandates? And sometimes it's just not accepting what's given, what's provided. So you have to make those types of choices. Another consideration I hear from parents is capability. I'm not a teacher. I don't know how to teach, or I didn't go to school. I didn't go to college. You are a parent. You have the resources around you. There's libraries. There's people in your community who know what you don't. Nobody knows everything. I'm a teacher, but I would not teach a math class. I know my limitations. All right. So that's when resources become a factor, where you may want to outsource. You may want to outsource what the subject areas that maybe you don't find strength in. It's easy the younger the child is as well. You know, as your child is younger, you're educating them according to, you know, what's in your environment. And then, you know, they get a little older. Like I said, you got the library. There's a great deal of resources, YouTube, you know, like a movie, a video. There's this online is loaded. Like this is the information age. We have access to so much information. And the children themselves are resourceful. So that outsourcing of the subject areas that you need can go as little as one class or one subject to enrolling in something like a Sage Academy, where you're still, so let me say that. As the parent, you are your child's first and primary educator. Whether they're homeschool or in a school system, you're still the first and primary educator, because they're observing you, they're learning by our examples. You know, how many people say she, you know, he or she act just like her mother or father? They're observing us and they're picking up the habits, the words, the styles, the mannerisms, the ideas, the attitudes of the people that they spend the most time around. All right, so you are the first educator of your child, whether they're in, you know, in a traditional school setting or not. So again, each homeschool situation is unique to the household, the state, the family, the needs, etc. Resources, a word about curriculum. Curriculum is basically what you use to teach. What materials are you using to teach anyone? You know, whatever it is that you're teaching, there's the books, the videos, the articles. So it's not necessarily, it's not the definition of curriculum, or what it means, not even the definition. What curriculum means is often distorted for many, even those in the education world. So I do want to make sure you all get the information that curriculum is simply the resources that are used to teach a subject. All right. If you are, you know, teaching math, the resources you use it is the curriculum. You know, you might use the abacus, you might use videos, you might use math workbooks, you might use the, I always forget what the rod called, but the, you know, the tens and ones blocks. Okay, and culturally relevant doesn't mean just, you know, buying the workbook that has Black people in it. All right, so again, you all, this is supposed to be an introduction, but it's so vast. And I know
time check is
okay,
7:36.
Okay, perfect. So I'm
But it's
finishing
fine
up with,
if you do go a little bit over, that's fine. Because you have a lot of information, so don't feel like you gotta like super duper condense it. But I just wanted to give you that time check just so you know what we're looking at.
okay, good. Do we have any questions in the chat?
We don't have any, but we do have a few comments, and I know that I have some things that I want to say. So when you
Okay, so we're about done. I think I don't want to move the slide in case I think this might be the last slide. So we're going to be in a good shape.
okay.
I think it's the last slide. Financial considerations. Freedom ain't free. That Arden said that. I said that. Okay, so yeah, and I even went through that. The this is okay, goes. Oh, guys, so this is not even, I didn't even update this slide, but the financial considerations here would be the curriculum and your resources, okay? So curriculum can be free, okay? Again, the libraries, what you have around your home, resources, like the amount that we invest in education. So here's the deal with financial considerations. Education is an investment, okay? Educating our children, our families should be thought of as seriously as a part of our investment portfolios as any other vehicle, okay? So if you're homeschooling traditionally, primary, you know, always a primary educator, but you're the one who's going to drive the instruction, deliver it, so on and so forth. Maybe you outsource a class or two and get on OutSchool, or, you know, form a co-op. We didn't even, you know, there's co-ops and pods. So there's tons of directions that you can go. Though that's where your cost factor comes in. And you could control that again by sales, libraries, you know, borrowing, exchanging, et cetera. You get creative. On the top end of it, I'm outsourcing the private education of my child. Okay, if you're private, you're paying. Public, you're accepting the privilege of your government. So I'll stop there and we'll take questions and comments. Yep, questions and comments. Yep. That's it.
Okay, sis. So we had a few people, well, mainly Miss Josephine Joyner. She wasn't aware of some of the things that you were talking about on there. And she also talked about how she also had removed her children from the Connecticut school system. And the good thing about Connecticut is that we don't have as many, like strongholds over what you can or cannot do with your children when it comes to educating. And I'm so grateful to be living here and to, have the space to kind of do what I want without anybody being over breathing down my neck and watching me and this is that and the third. And you had touched on how basically like a lot of times we end up having to stand on our square when we want to choose to homeschool our children, even with the people who we love and who love us. And it's just really interesting because, I love my mom to death, but I understand that a lot of folks who come from a time period where they fought to have the children be in these schools with other children and, with the civil rights movement and all of these things. So and I'm talking to her about certain things and she's like, oh, is Josiah in school today? And this is that and the third. And so I'm like, well, he got a class, or whatever. It's not like how it was before when I took my, because when I took my son out of school, I basically had to get comfortable with the fact that it's not going to look traditional. It's going to be what we make it. It's going to be what we need it to be. And that's it.
And that brings a good point. I want to mention that. So those who do make that transition, avoid duplicating traditional school in your homeschool. We make that shift and we recreate school at home. And that's not homeschooling either. So you're right. You're definitely on the right track, Ayana, to be able to say, this is going to look different. It looks different, but he's learning. If we are in the kitchen making a recipe and the child is at our hip, if the recipe has to be doubled because we're having guests, you have just created a lesson in fractions.
Right. Exactly.
So the thing with homeschooling, the children who are homeschooled are actually learning more because it doesn't stop. If you're in the car and the child asks a question about something on the road or in our travels, if we take the time to listen to the question, get your head up from your phone and have a dialogue about the child's question, and they're going to learn something. There's a story I read in an article about a woman's journey to decide to homeschool, and the child requested it. The child was having challenges in school and wanted to be homeschooled, but the mom felt uncomfortable with her ability to be able to do that. And she tells the story in the article when she comes home one day from the grocery store and she's taking the groceries out the trunk, the detergent spills, she's frustrated now trying to clean up the detergent, and some fireflies come around. And she says, I wonder why they light up. How do they light up? Her and her daughter, early teens, sit on the porch and look up why fireflies and how they light up, to learn that it's a bioluminescent chemical and blah, blah, blah. And that's the day that family made the choice to homeschool, because the daughter said, Mom, this is homeschool, right? And the mom said, we about to do this. That was a science lesson out of frustration, out of the natural environment, and a discussion. Google information at our fingertips, and then you learn how to discern, what are the right resources on Google and what's not. Make sure you cover your internet safety and things like that. So it's all just things that we should be doing anyway as parents. So
I absolutely agree. So Issa had a question, and he says, I know HSLDA offers some grants for homeschools. Do you know of other financial resources for homeschools?
I don't. I honestly can't say that I do. And that's probably because I'm just wary about accepting funding outside of my community, because he who controls the purse controls the contents. So, again, I would say research. And when you do find sources that might have funds or whatever have you, you want to read the fine print. What is it that they're expecting? Because at the place where I am, if someone wants to offer money who's not another private entity, they could want to change my curriculum. They may not want me to teach culturally relevant pedagogy. I'm sorry, the teacher. They may not want me to teach culturally relevant content. So, I'm not sure. I go to my family, my friends, my community, and I say, this is something that this what we need. This is what we want to do. And folks, people spend their time and their money where they want to. I don't care how much you have. People spend their time and their money on what it is that's important to them. And I'm going to be candid and say that our community needs to reevaluate what's important to us in terms of where we spending our money and how we're spending it. Okay. We can why own the sneakers when you can own the stock? My children get a good. My children have Nikes. Why? They get the expensive sneakers. I would tell you they don't come from me. I have family members who are into that. They make sure they have them, and that we got to go somewhere and get. That's that. But the way my children play, Walmart and Target. The way my children play, they go outdoor, they run and they playing. My children ain't thinking about. They look at expensive sneakers, and I gotta say, you don't value. They don't value things like that. So I would not invest that much money in my children, because they rather go out and jump and walk right in the mud. We could be just walking. We can be dressed doing something for real. Right. And we all go around the puddle, and my children gonna walk right through the water, right through the puddle. Like, so, yeah. I don't. But again, everything is it's a click away, to find out. And homeschooling is private. It's private, So I don't know who's there's a bunch of money coming from everywhere now. I mean, every organization wants to make sure Black people get this, and Black women get this, and Black businesses get that. So it's out there. Just make sure that you are controlling the expectation around that, whatever funding or support that you need.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And, to your point about us having the finances and just basically prioritizing, like, I know I work on a very limited budget, being an entrepreneur and things like that. However, my son's education is a priority to me. And, I piece things together. We do I print some stuff right at home. We do some worksheets as well. I use Outschool. They have K-12. We have Sage Academy, of course. There's a lot of different resources out there. There's a Khan Academy. There's so many different free resources that exist, where you don't have to be an expert on these things, or whatever it may be. And what I love about homeschooling, there are a few things that I love about it, but one of the things that I love about it is that I could take my time with my son, and we could figure out what he needs to build on. Absolutely. Whereas when you're in traditional school, a lot of these kids are making it to the next grade, not because they have grasped the concepts, but because if that school wants to continue to get funding or whatever it may be, they have to push a certain amount of kids through in order to continue to show a certain number that they're meeting a quota for, these children. But a lot of times these children have not really grasped the concepts. So some kids don't even know how to read a clock. So, I mean, it's mad real out here when it comes to a lot of these things. So I like the fact that we have control over how fast, like what we do, how we do it. Maybe we want to take some time off. Maybe we don't want to school today. Maybe we want to relax today. And it don't have to be a weekend in order for us to be able to do that. We can just say on a Wednesday, we're not doing no homeschooling today. We just going to chill today. So what I know I did, a lot of people are talking about like this unschooling thing, right? Where, so that's a whole nother different topic. However, I have been incorporating some unschooling in my own home because what I've noticed is that my son was under a lot of stress. We both were under a lot of stress with having to engage with the school system. Not only that, but we can't even parent our children how we would like to parent our children. There's that issue. We're always having to engage with all these different systems and different things like that, just by way of, that's another thing. And it's traumatizing, when you're trying to raise your child, you're trying to do what you need to do. And not only that, but I not only removed my son from school, but before I did that, I removed him from special education. And first and foremost, and they were like, oh, we'll reach back out to you in 3 years and check up on you. And this is that and the third. I said, no, don't check up on me. I don't want your calls. I don't want your emails. I don't want nothing from y'all. So leave us alone, like we're good. So
I commend that, because we want to be careful of those labels, and unschooling is not a whole separate thing. I'm actually glad you mentioned it, because it was supposed to be a part of something that I mentioned in terms of the logistics of it. And we touched on it a little bit when I said be careful of, just recreating traditional school in your homeschool.
Yeah, you did.
Unschooling is a key component, especially if you're coming from a traditional setting. I found in my experience, I had to unschool more so than my children, because they, in their life, they've only had 2 years of schooling outside of me. And even that was private by choice. They didn't go to public school. So they had to unschool from that experience, though, because it wasn't as, Afro-centered as I would have wanted it to be. But I did what was best for me and them at that time. And I'm also, again, a recovering public school teacher. So my experience was, I was indoctrinated into public school education and trained to teach public school. So I had begun recreating traditional school in my classroom. And I had to stop and say, you know what, pull back. Let's pull back. And what you do really quickly as a good, so what's on unschooling? Relax, chill, like Ayana said. Observe your children. Observe what they're interested in. Observe what they're doing, what brings them joy. And now you find ways to make sure that they're learning through that, right? So it's just the observation, allowing them to explore, to learn their interests, their learning style. Unschooling is simply that, sitting back, let everybody just being, observing, and finding ways to learn through what comes naturally to the child. And that will lead into self-directed, this notion of, oh, well, they got to know multiplication by the end. Good night, girls. I'm almost done. I'll come see you before we finish. You have to know your multiplication sets by this time, or you should be reading by this time. It doesn't happen the same for every child. So, you keep, so let's say you have a child who's resistant to reading, right? Take a break from teaching how to read. Take a break from whatever the subject is they're showing resistance to. But then you plant things around the house like books or, you plant things that are of interest to them. And now you've created a situation for them to pick up the book and read it because it's something of interest. And you're not saying, sit down and read chapter 3 and write, Right. So unschooling that is a key component to that transition.
And I'm glad that you did touch on that. And I just wanted to say too, we do have a question, but I wanted to say how one of the things that was very concerning to me and why I knew I really needed to take my son from out of school was what I saw to be Stockholm Syndrome, where, you know, the child is basically like, they're learning these survival tactics while they're in these schools, and they're actually caring for and loving the people who are actually their oppressors, and the people who will never like go past a certain point. Like they will never go past their own comfort zone in order to see your child be as healthy as possible. And not only that, but a lot of them are even imposing upon your child these ideas that are not in alignment with. So like, I felt like I need to take my son out because, you know, he's being educated by young white women who are taking away his critical thinking skills. Not only that, but so they're basically like not allowing him to come up with ideas and thoughts on his own. They're too busy feeding him everything, you know, and so he's not thinking on his own. And not only that, but he had an expectation of what my behavior as a Black woman should be in my household, and I wasn't having it. And I found that to be a conflict with, you know, like who I am naturally, and it was taking away the essence. Like he wasn't able to appreciate the essence of the Black woman, of the Black family, of the Black woman and child. And I felt like I had to help my son regain his own consciousness. And that has
you
been
cannot
a major...
someone else who, what did we say about our definition? Education is acquired, it's unique to each cultural group. Yes. And it's for the purpose of gaining, of acquiring what it is, the needs and the satisfaction of that group. And we cannot take, because each group experience you know, the education for them comes through that cultural experience and conceptual framework. Someone of another culture cannot properly educate our children the same way we can't properly educate their children, because we're not culturally the same. So it's not, you know, it's not reverse racism, like, you know, all of that, you know, critical race theory and all this. I don't have a position on any of the crap, because it is what it is. And if you're teaching truth and educating and not training or miseducating, you know, then it's not about, you know, the white teacher, the Black teacher, this and that. It's just what is culturally specific to this group, to this learner.
Yes, first. Absolutely.
And then when you have a group of learners, you know, well, what's the group? Because one of my colleagues, she says something very intriguing in a panel we shared together. And she said, education has always been culturally relevant. It just depends on to which culture is it relevant, you know, responsive to. Yes. And it's always, you know, it hasn't been, you know, we haven't learned about us. We've learned about everybody else's culture except our own. You know, so again, even if you're, and I want to be sensitive to those who, you know, traditional school they might have to be there. So everybody's situation is unique. Absolutely. And that's why I'm emphasizing that even if your child is in a traditional school, you're still the first and primary educator. So like I said, my children's experience outside of the home was in a predominantly white school. But what do you think I did at home consistently to make sure they remember who they were within that structure?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know? That education definitely takes place at home. And I mean, I even went to school in predominantly white schools. Even when I moved into the inner city, I was bussed out they were like, you still going to them same schools. And I have to say, I did get a quality education, but it wasn't one that necessarily like made me feel comfortable with who I was. However, the knowledge I got, or the, you know, with the subjects and different things like that. I mean, social studies really blew my mind, because I'm like, so you mean to tell me all y'all got to tell me about is slavery? But anyways, so Rashidi has a question. And he wants to know, how do colleges evaluate homeschool kids?
Oh, good question. Good question. So it depends on the college. So there are colleges and universities that are homeschool friendly. And what the simple answer is that you again, in the observation and assessment, you determine what colleges of interest does your learner have, and you contact the colleges directly to find out what it is that they expect, what do they want. Mm-hmm. And then you tailor your homeschool experience for that high schooler to do that. Mm-hmm. Right? So you look at the college will tell you what they need, and you tailor your experience to accommodate that. And just, a good word of advice, there's a shift. There is a shift occurring. And I have a colleague in particular who is working very closely with schools who are leaning on the, if you're a homeschooler, as well as someone who's been involved in just systems or depending on your professional skill set, there's a group of people, a field that can deliver to the colleges and universities a paradigm shift, to begin to shift what's needed. As I hear from college professors talking about students coming in as freshmen and they're not prepared. They can't write a paper. They don't know the math skills that they need. They're not, speaking. They're lacking critical thinking skills. Mm-hmm. This is a part of where the school system is failing, right? So there is a shift happening to begin to address that. How do we really prepare students to be able to make the transition from whatever school environment they're in to college and be prepared? Okay. So you have home, it's not difficult, and it depends on the tract of the child, of the student.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that answer. If
anybody and really quickly, just in case we have somebody from Maryland on the call, I didn't mention in terms of the different states. Maryland is another state I work really closely with, and there's if you come under an umbrella, Maryland has what's called a homeschool umbrella, and the homeschool umbrella is the legal entity that the homeschool umbrella legalizes the homeschoolers and serves as a resource to make sure that they have everything that's needed. So let's say you do have a child who needs a 504 plan or an IEP. Okay, this is real for some children. Mm-hmm. The homeschool umbrella does that. If transcripts are needed, they're provided. Institutions like Sage Academy, covers those types of things. But yes, a homeschool child is in no way challenged or impeded to go to college at all. Yes. In fact, they're getting there earlier. Homeschool, they're getting there sooner than the typical 17, 18 years old, and they are coming. And that's because homeschool, we forget what grades we're in. There aren't any grades. Homeschoolers are just teaching. And if that child ready, like I don't know what grade my children in. I try to keep track of it for when I got to answer a question when they participating in something. But, SAGE is set up according to beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And Mama Ayana could be in the beginner class, depending on what the subject is. And her son might be in the advanced class. So it's learners, no piece of fruit on the tree gets ripe at the same time.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. I love that. I love the way that you look at this. Is there any more questions that you all have for Arden tonight? Like, let me see. Okay, so I wanted to touch on how sometimes I've been talking to people about a multitude of different things, and a lot of people say, like, they make decisions and choices and they say, oh, I had to, because these systems are really making people feel like they don't have choices. And people are really like allowing for this to be a truth, because it can only be a truth if you allow it to be a truth. And, but the reality of it is that we all have a choice at the end of the day. And I want people to know that you have a choice.
A choice.
Nothing you do is not something you have to do. Like, you don't have to send your kid to school. You don't have to go and do things to your body or your child's body that is not in alignment with what you feel and what's real for you. You do not have to do anything but what you want to do at the end of the day. And this is where standing on your square is of the utmost importance. And people don't really realize, like, you have 100% agency over self. And, you know, it took me years to know that. At one point in time, I had no idea that I had as much power as I have. But now that I know, it ain't no going back. And I want everyone to know, even if this is your starting point by watching this podcast episode, intro to educating at home, like, everything from this point on, just know you have the power to choose. And you don't have to feel, because there's always going to be someone trying to drag you back in. It could be somebody that look like you, that don't look like you, but trying to drag you back in, trying to get you back in line with what you should be doing, where you should be. But just know that a lot of things are changing and transitioning and shifting, like you were saying. And part of that is us being in a revolution of knowledge. There's so, like, it's right at the tip of our finger. It's right at our fingertips. We could get on the computer and we could find out anything, a majority of a lot of the things that we want to know. And, you know, that's how they're finding out where we're at right here, right now, today, is by utilizing that internet and getting on, you know what I'm saying, and getting the information that they need. So I just want people to know that, because so many people just give up their power. They give it up because they just don't know. So I felt it necessary to say that, because I did that for so many years until I knew. And what else was it?
What she said.
What she said.
I
wrote some notes. I want to make sure I covered everything. So I did begin the process of doing the letter of intent for homeschool, but they were so tired of me. They was like, get this lady out of here. They was like, get her child out of here. You know,
okay, so you're all set with that? Because it's simple. It's really simple.
Oh my God. I ended up not even having to submit it, because really I had already wrote them an email saying that this is what I want to do. But then they tried to, you know, like, make me all the bureaucracy and stuff like that. Oh no, you got to do it exactly like this and like that. But by the time I was done with them, they just let me do whatever. And he's out of school.
And I'm glad you said that, because I will also say, you know, even the form, with the way they present that form, there's a form and there's a letter, and all you got to do is write your letter. It will behoove you to just write your letter.
An email, it could be anything in writing. It could be an email. Just make sure it gets to the right people. But they're going to try to tell you that you got to do it like this, or you have to do it like that, but you don't have to do it any type of way that they say it. You just need to make sure that they know what your intent is.
Put them on notice.
That's it. Put them on notice at the end of the day. Well, that's in Connecticut. I want to be specific. That's in Connecticut. And that's how you handle it here. Like, if you're in Connecticut, just please know, like, you can do what you want to do with your children. And I like the fact that you assist families with understanding, like, what their rights are with the IEP, the 504 plan, all of these different types of things, because I spent a lot of time going to these meetings. Like I said, it was becoming stressful, very traumatic for my son and I to always have, well, I got to advocate. You know, it just doesn't make sense to me that you have to advocate for something or whatever. And they always just trying to pull you in. They give you a multitude of paperwork that people don't understand. And a lot of times those folks don't even understand the paperwork within those IEPs, all of the different this, that, and the third. They just go along with it because this is what they've been given. So we need to understand that even the people who are of authority are not really of any type of authority in even their own lives, and not over you either. So I'm just being real, because they have to give
and oftentimes they are gatekeepers, and you have to educate them on the process that you're pursuing.
Exactly.
Yeah, she ain't never lied. She ain't never
Exactly.
lied.
So, and that's what I found, and I feel the need to say this because this is the Yananomics podcast. And I need for people to know that we're not here just talking about homeschooling because it's the next fad. No, we're talking about homeschooling because this is an important tool for you to take back control over your life, your children's lives, and their education and what they are taking into their mind, heart, soul, spirit. It's important. It's so important. And like I live this. I'm not just, we're not just talking about, like, we live this every single day. And I just want for people to know that you can do it. And like Arden says, freedom ain't free. Okay, that's her quote. Freedom ain't free. And that's so true. So put your money on your children, bet on them, because they're the ones that we're going to leave this world to, and they're worth every single penny. I have a very limited budget, but I would never do anything different than what I'm already doing. And I appreciate you so much, sis. Issa says, thank you, queens. I appreciate y'all. And we appreciate everybody that got on here today.
Thank you for spending time with me tonight. Thank you for giving me your time. You're appreciated.
Yes. And thank you so much, Arden. So now Arden will be back on. When's the next date that you're on, Arden? Do you know off the top of your head?
I think November 23rd.
And you're going to be do intro to civics on that date? You're not sure, right?
Intro to civics on the 3rd. Yeah, because I have 2 sessions. I think one in November and one in December, and one civics and one's intro to law. So just keep following Empress. Well, just keep following the podcast and you'll get it.
Yes, the schedule is up there.
And just put in the chat for info@sageacademy.com if anybody needs to contact me. info@sage, SAHGE, science, arts, history, government, and economics academy.com. You can email me there, and the website should probably be in the chat for you all too.
I did put the website in the chat. Now, if there's anyone in a position to be able to assist a family financially, with a scholarship to Sage Academy, please.
There are some people out there who can't do it. If you're fortunate enough to sponsor a family, please do. info@sageacademy.com. And on the website, you can schedule a consultation with me, particularly if you need support. That letter, if you need, I'm here.
Yes.
I'm here. In my limited capacity and time, I will assist where I can. But you have support. You have guidance, and we're a part of the tribe. We are a part of your tribe.
Absolutely. And I definitely am a part of the tribe as well. So if anybody is in need of assistance with advocating for themselves or trying to figure out which way to go with anything that they're doing, even if their child is in special education or whatever it may be, and you just kind of need a little bit of information on what your rights are, like, don't hesitate to reach out to Arden or myself, because Arden is originally, like, she's been in Connecticut school system, she understands it and things like that. So you can reach out to either one of us. So and I am just so excited, and I'm just so happy that we're able to have this conversation. If there's anyone that would also like to donate to the Yananomics podcast and support us so we could continue to do the work that we do with these Teach Me Tuesdays, please do so via Cash App at Empress Ayana Love. That's 1 N, not 2 N's. Empress Ayana Love on Cash App. Please do, support us. We would really appreciate that. Go support Arden, support another family that needs, because there are a lot of families that, Arden is coming into contact with that want to really homeschool, but they need some help. So please don't hesitate to donate to this sister so that she can help the families that really need her most. And Arden, again, thank you so much. Yes, this was wonderful. I can't wait till our next one is going to be just as powerful. So y'all go follow Arden on Facebook. Y'all make sure y'all go like Sage Academy on Facebook so that she knows y'all paying attention. Okay. All right. Much love, everyone. Have a wonderful night. Peace.
Rest well.
Yes, thank you. Oh Lord, how I close this thing out.